My suggestion would be you do that same kind of diligence, even more so with one of the most important investments that you're going to make in your life.
The places that are usually the biggest boogeyman in a home inspection are the crawl space and the attic.
So on average, I will see a home inspection report of upwards of 50 pages.
Welcome everybody to another delayed episode of Real Estate for Real People. My name is Brad Whitaker, and this is my lovely wife,
Marianne Whitaker.
And today we're going to talk about the scintillating topic of home inspections. Now we've got some really great, real-time stories that we're going to share with you about how these things can absolutely go sideways on you. And when I say on you, I mean you as a homeowner. We've got stories from the real estate side about how bad decisions or good decisions have affected our buyers or our sellers. So as we get through the process here, we'll share some of the do's and don'ts and why you should and why you shouldn't. And if it even matters. I mean, think about it. Should you even do a home inspection on a new house? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So let's start out today talking about the seller's disclosure. I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball at you. So yes. The seller's disclosure is, I believe, state law in many states, if not all of them. And it is the opportunity for the seller to disclose everything that they know that is wrong about their house since they've owned it.
Since they've owned it.
Some states, like Hawaii, require the seller to know everything about their home since it was built. So not just since they own it, but in Washington state, it's just since you've owned your home. So, people will often say, well, I don't know if there's been a survey. Well, the home's, 100 years old. So yeah, there's probably been a survey at some point because they built it. Mm-hmm. But they don't have to disclose that. So in the Washington state form, we have 4 answers that the seller can answer on the form. Yes, no, I don't know, or not applicable. Mm-hmm. And there's no right or wrong. It's just what it is, it is. So what we're looking at is the law requires the seller be truthful on this. And we've seen some of these people, thanks Luna, we've seen some people kind of get bit by being truthful. So for example, I was representing a buyer, and we had about $10,000 worth of repairs that we requested. And the seller came back and said, nope, I'm only going to do $3,500. And so our buyer really wanted that house bad, so they acquiesced and they said, okay, we'll fix it later. Well, the agent left the Form 17 in the MLS supplement paperwork. And then the appraiser got a hold of that, and she sent it to the underwriter. The underwriter looks at that and goes, we're not going to close on this home until you fix all of these things. So that repair list went all the way back up to $10,000 for that seller. She was none too happy about that, right? But because she was honest, and the underwriter got a hold of it, now the underwriter could make her do those repairs.
So I think the lesson in that isn't about the honesty piece. It's really about making sure that document does not continue to be uploaded into the multiple listing service, so that an appraiser can have access to it at such time as when they do the appraisal.
Right. Yeah. So you can upload it, but as soon as you're under contract, take it out of the MLS so that it doesn't get uploaded and by the appraiser.
Right.
Okay. If you want to let her out, you can, if she's being a pain.
She's like, I want to go visit my friend.
I've got dogs to play with. Okay, so anyways, back on track. Form 17, requirement by law in the state of Washington, but you got to be careful about how you use it as a real estate agent.
Right. I think the other thing that's really important is that the Form 17 is asking you about the physical pieces of the house. It's not asking you to disclose if there has been a death in the house. It's not asking you to disclose any of those kinds of things in the state of Washington. The types of things that you need to disclose would be, aside from the structural pieces of the home, if you are aware that there has been drug production in the home. That obviously is going to affect the structure of the home, though. So things like that do have to be disclosed. And because it's a statewide form, there are going to be things on that form that have nothing to do or not much to do with Southwest Washington. There's a whole section on irrigation. We have plenty of rain in Southwest Washington, so we don't really have a lot of irrigation issues.
But
In
they might
Eastern
not have
Washington,
in Ritzville.
right.
Right.
In Eastern Washington, obviously, it's the agricultural center of our state. And so being a statewide form, that's why it's on there.
Yeah. So, anyways, important that you understand as a homeowner that you've got this form that you've got to fill out. Please be truthful, but make sure that your agent is managing that for you properly, because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble.
And when the buyer receives it, it's informational only. And when you sign your name on that document, you're saying that I've received this form, not that I agree and know everything about this house already as a buyer. So just
Yep.
to be clear.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so why do an inspection at all? Is kind of the overlying question. So let's look at this from a couple different perspectives. You can make an offer on a house as is. In other words, I'm really looking at this as if I'm not going to do any repairs, and often we see that on the sell side.
I was
Home
gonna
is being
say,
sold as
as
is,
is,
right?
yes.
Meaning the seller's like, I ain't fixing a thing.
And there are a lot of reasons for that. Oftentimes, it may be a distressed kind of sale where the sellers don't have the finances to do that. It may be an estate. It may be all sorts of things like that, that they're just not funds to make any repairs that are requested.
Yeah, foreclosure,
Short
short sale, yeah, trust, estate, whatever. Or just people who are selling the home that aren't in any of those positions, but they're just adamant that, because we've seen some generations who refuse to make those repairs or refuse to help with closing costs or any of that stuff, because that's not how my daddy did it. Right. So, I mean, there could be any number of reasons for that. But so you've got the whole as is thing. Does it mean that you can't do an inspection?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
When a buyer's agent is writing up a contract, you have options about the addenda or the forms that you can add in. And they're contingencies. So those are situations where those requests have to be satisfied in some way in order for the transaction to close. Some common contingencies are financing contingency. So in other words, if you don't get the financing, it doesn't work out, you have the ability to terminate the contract. So financing, home inspection, a septic contingency, well contingency, title contingency. So those are all things that can be brought in as part of the purchase and sale. And we recommend personally, and so does the MLS and Washington Realtors, that you always do inspections. I think of it like this: if I'm going to buy a car, I'm rarely going to buy it sight unseen without knowing what's going on in the engine and what's happening in the interior of the car and has it been in an accident. So if you're going to do that kind of diligence for a car, my suggestion would be you do that same kind of diligence, even more so with one of the most important investments that you're going to make in your life, being a home purchase, right? I think of it as a little bit of insurance. You want to know what you're buying. And even if a seller says, it's as is, I'm not going to fix anything, I, as a home buyer, would still want to know where the boogeymen are in the house, right?
Well, we see that a lot, right? Where at least when we're consulting with a buyer, we're going to tell them, look, if you're okay buying this as is, let's get the home inspection done anyway. So at least you have a punch list of the worst items that you can start picking off as you're living in the home. Because we've seen just recently where that's kind of bit somebody because they didn't do a home inspection. They didn't realize a major component of their property was defunct, and now they're trying to sell that property, and they're going to have to
Fix
install a new septic system. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So, should you do a home inspection if you have a brand new house, like no one's ever lived in it, just come off the line?
You would think not. However, there are a lot of contractors doing a lot of different pieces on a new home build.
Working really fast.
And sometimes pipes don't get connected. I know that's going to be shocking.
Right.
But we have actually had a client do a home inspection on a brand new build, and the sewer pipe was not connected from the home to the main in the street.
Right. There wasn't even a hole in the foundation. They had
So working fast, not necessarily always, and you have multiple people working on it. So if the communication slips, things don't get done right. So absolutely do it on a brand new build every time.
Well, and so that home inspector that did that inspection for us also did another inspection on a brand new house. And he came out, by the time he was done, he actually gave the buyer a $50 credit. He said, I literally can't find anything wrong with this house. So you go from one extreme to the other.
Sure.
So it's not...
But I would never say it's a waste of money.
Oh, no.
I understand that it's expensive.
Yeah.
And when you are in a market where you're making multiple offers and, losing out, or you make 3 or 4 offers and you do a home inspection on each one of those, that gets to be cost prohibitive. And I understand that. But better that than finding out that, oh my goodness, we have a $60,000 foundation fix we need to have done.
Right.
$2,100 for home inspections is going to be a lot cheaper in the long run.
Yeah. And so understanding this, that a home inspection will typically run between $400 to $500. All the ancillary things that home inspector may add can change the price. So
Sure.
we have some home inspectors that will do sewer scopes and radon testing and all those things, and it just adds and adds and adds, and so you get all these add-ons, and now it's $1,000.
But you get to choose what
Right.
you're adding on.
Absolutely.
So just, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not an automatic, oh, I think I'll add this and this and this. They're good
And the
about
bottom
asking.
line, home inspection is adequate, right? All these other extras don't necessarily mean that it's going to be a better inspection, but we'll know, like in our town where we live, there's a lot of homes that were built in the 40s and the 50s that have this horrible plumbing product called Orangeburg. And that was the main sewer line that runs out to the alley.
And what is Orangeburg, by the way?
Orangeburg is tightly wound tar paper. And so it's coated, sure. And it's really hard. I mean, you bang on a new piece of that and it sounds like it is pipe. But you can see it's paper, inside to out. The problem is when you put that product with water inside it and there's wet dirt on the outside of it, it starts to eventually collapse and get soft. Tree roots get in there. So anyways, it can be a problem. So it's important that you do your inspections. So, okay, so we know that you should do it even if it's as is. We know that you should do it on a new build. So home inspections are a good idea just in general.
So one of the challenges that we run into sometimes is that a seller or a listing agent will say, well, we're not going to do any repairs. Why are you including a home inspection contingency? Buyers still, in my opinion, need to have the option, if the repairs are
Too bad.
to be able to back out of that transaction. There's a way that you can add into the paperwork that the home inspection is for buyer's information only.
Right.
And no repairs, and you just state, and no repairs will be requested.
But it doesn't mean that you can't back out if you find something that's too big of a problem. So
Correct.
the places that are usually the biggest boogeyman in a home inspection are the crawl space and the attic. Because nobody wants to crawl anywhere down where there's dead animals or spiders or who knows what. So we've seen some foundations broken, falling away. I mean, we've seen all kinds of nightmares from underneath the house. We've also, the home inspector's gone into an attic and there's been a fire and the seller
Was
never
never
disclosed. And so you're like, oh, that's a problem, because when you get down the road, when there's been a fire, if that fire was reported, the home insurance company will know about that. They'll flag the house, and then you'll find out when the insurance binder's being written. They're going to go, whoa, was the fire damage ever repaired? And everybody's like, what fire damage? So it's important that those are the two areas that really hide all the boogeymen.
Yep.
Right? So you've got to have inspections there at a minimum. Not that a home inspector will only just inspect those two places, but that's where you're going to find the big problem. So if you need to back out and not repair because you've got a $60,000 foundation fix or a $30,000 roof fix, you can.
Right.
So it's important that we do that.
Yep.
Okay, so what are the common types of home inspections that are available for most people? I mean, and when I say common, I'm breaking it into common versus secondary.
Okay.
So common are found on the first inspection. Secondary come from what's found on the first inspection.
So common inspections are your general home inspection. And the home inspector will go out and look at the electrical and, check to see if there are GFCIs, check the roof, check the attic, check the, foundation. And their job, home inspector's job, is to pick apart a house.
Right.
Their job is to find everything that is wrong. So on average, I will see a home inspection report of upwards of 50 pages. Most of the time, or a lot of the time, those may be very minor things. An electrical plate is missing in the kitchen or anywhere in the house. GFCIs, cracks in the sidewalk. I mean, they are literally putting everything in that report.
Vegetation too close to the house.
Vegetation too close to the house.
Things you wouldn't think are even an issue.
Right.
But they are.
But they are. So if you get a really huge home inspection report, don't necessarily worry about it. I mean, a lot of those things are really easy to repair once you're in the house or address. So home inspection, if you are not on city water, you'll have a septic inspection. You'll want to check the drain fields, check the tanks. They'll inspect the tanks on septic, and if it calls for, they may call for the tanks to be pumped. It's a fun job. I wouldn't want it. So there's septic. And then out in the county, we've got wells. And sometimes those wells have particulates in the water that need to be, that homeowners want to find out what's in the water. Do we have, what are some of the common things that bacteria in the water?
E. coli, nitrates, heavy metals. Anything that you've heard about Flint, Michigan, and the water and the stuff they have in their water there, you can have it in well water.
Yeah.
Right? But I think
those are top three.
Yeah. The important part is to understand that there is a distinction between a country home and a city home.
Yes.
Right?
Generally speaking.
Yeah. City home is typically going to have city water, city sewer. Mm-hmm. The home inspector will not inspect the water or the sewer line.
No.
That's a secondary inspection. In the country, same thing. Well inspector or the home inspector won't inspect the well, can inspect the septic system because that's not their job.
Right. Not their specialty.
Right. So a company comes out with a camera and they run the camera down the sewer line if you're in the city, and they'll run it all the way out to the street and take video and make comments as they go. And some of the stuff we've seen in there, crazy. Country folks, a little different deal. You've got to have a well company come and do the well inspection, and that's often seen as a quality test and or a quantity test.
So how many gallons per minute are coming into the home?
Yeah, and there are certain loans that are going to be far more picky about that. Like VA, they want to have a 2-hour flow test. That means that well guy's got to sit there for 2 hours and measure the water coming out of that well and see if the water is dropping or if it's staying strong.
Water pressure is dropping.
Water pressure is dropping, and how many gallons per minute are kicking out. Yeah. Because what that's telling us is it's telling us a story about the well. Now, at that same time, that well inspector is going to take a sample from usually outside. Mm-hmm. And I've seen them dip the thing in iodine. I've seen them hit it with a blowtorch to sanitize the nozzle that you turn your faucet onto, your hose onto. They take the sample, they send that to the lab. Now, some of those labs can come back in 3 days. If it's heavy metals and you're looking for all of the heavy metals, it could be 3 weeks, just depending on how backed up the lab is where you send it. But
So what I hear you saying is if you're going to do a well inspection, ask for about at least 21 days to get that
Yeah.
information back.
yeah, exactly. And
That's not the default on the form, by the way.
yeah, you can pay to rush it, but it's
You're gonna
again you're paying I don't know, $175 to $200
Yeah.
to get it all back quickly. So there's different ways you need to look at this thing. The other side is if you're a seller, we've actually seen the seller agree to a well inspection that was a volume test, and the well actually ran out of water inside 2 hours, and then blew up the pump because the pump was sucking air and they weren't watching it. And so now what are we doing? Who's responsible to fix
for
that well pump? Is it the seller's responsibility? Is it the buyer's responsibility? Are the agents involved? I mean, what's going on? So you've got to be very careful about the well tests, and you want to talk to your agent about who's responsible for what if something breaks. And their designated broker should be able to put verbiage into the contract to make sure that you as the buyer or you as the seller are protected.
And a lot of those protections are already in the forms. In the home inspection form, it does talk about if something breaks or there is a flooding, if they remove, like, say, the toilet tank because that's the access for the well, for the sewer scope. It actually addresses that in the form, that it is the buyer's responsibility to put everything back, make everything whole, as we say, again, should something like that happen.
Yeah.
So there are always going to be kind of funky things that come up. But yeah.
Yeah. And the other side of that, it's important to remember, if you can hear our dog rubbing against the wall with her collar, the home inspector is only liable for the value of their home inspection.
Yes.
So we've heard stories where home inspectors have left the oven on and the house catches on fire. We have heard stories of where the home inspector leaves the tub on in the master bath because he wants to test the jets in the tub, forgets that it's on, leaves the house with the water running, and the tub's plugged.
Yeah.
The homeowner can go after the home inspector, but only for the amount that the buyer has paid. Right. So $400. That's all when you sign as the buyer, when you sign that contract, you are that home inspector's liable for what the home buyer has paid. So you got to be very careful about who you use as a home inspector because it could be problematic. Okay, so let's talk secondary home inspections that come off of what's found on the primary home inspection.
Okay.
Or the well inspection or the sewer inspection, septic inspection.
So home inspectors can only evaluate general pieces about the home. So some secondary things that you might want to have done. If you have a fireplace, you may want that they may call out that there's a fireplace, have somebody come inspect the fireplace, clean it, whatever. Maybe the mortar's loose. So that would be considered a secondary inspection. Radon, which is a colorless, odorless gas.
It's heavier than air and it basically lives in your basement.
Yes.
Or your
And so we don't see that much in our part of Southwest Washington. It's very prevalent. Not that it shouldn't be done here. It's just not as common a practice. It's done in Vancouver and Portland areas all the time. WDOs, wood destroying organisms, those little pesky things that like to eat your house from the inside out. They love the lumber. So anything like that, the home inspector calls out. That could be a secondary inspection. Foundation would be another one. Roof would be another one. So home inspectors can generally see, obviously, cracks in the foundation. If it's concerning enough to them, they will suggest that you get a second opinion.
Yeah, and it's important that you really pay attention to those, right? So you've recently had a scenario where you had a client, when they bought the home, they didn't do a septic inspection.
Yes.
And we're now to the point where we're seeing a septic inspection is failing because of something that happened with the last owner. So where this should have been taken care of by the last owner, it's now fallen in the lap of your current client.
Yeah.
And that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's really important that when you're buying a house, though you're focused on that time period, the excitement of buying and all that kind of thing, at some point in time, you're probably going to want to or need to sell the home. So as you're looking at this investment that you're making, try to keep in mind that it's a long-term thing. And you're going to be on the other side of that transaction as a seller at some point in time. So just make sure that the decisions that you're making are ones that you're going to be happy living with even into the future. That's super important.
Yeah. So when you're buying your home, you have to think about when you're going to sell your home.
Exactly.
Period. Because nobody lives in their home forever.
No.
In generationally now, that group who has planned to stay in there forever, that's not the common way now.
Yep.
Right? So
True.
make sure that you are thinking about your future, because if you pass on something thinking, oh, I'll get to it, or I'll buy this house and I'll build a garage, chances are you're never going to build that garage. So you're going to be frustrated with your home purchase forever. Yeah. Same thing with a home inspection. Don't skip on something to save $150 now, because it will absolutely bite you in the long term. Yeah. Okay, anything else that we need to talk about regarding the inspection process? We've got, should we, shouldn't we?
I think one of the things that becomes really important is that use your real estate broker, your real estate agent. There are a lot of things that we've talked about today, and you're like, how am I going to know who to call? How am I going to know who's going to do these things for me? That's what your real estate broker is for. Each one of us has basically, or should have, a team of individuals that we've worked with often in the past that we know, love, and trust. We should have multiple individuals for you to choose from. So you can call them and vet them and say, yeah, I think this is the person that I want to use. So this is not a process that you should ever feel like you have to do this on your own.
Gremlins under the table. Pay no mind.
We have a dog that loves coffee.
Yeah. Probably shouldn't, but she does. Anyways.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree with all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's important that we do them. Now is not the time to be cheap, right?
No.
If you have limited budget, you need to discuss that with your agent right out of the gate. And because you're going to have down payment, you're going to have inspection costs, and you don't want to be the person buying a house from a single person who's never really overused the systems, and then you put a family of 5 in a house that has a collapsed sewer line going out to the back. You're instantly going to run into problems. The home warranty places
Yes.
that we do business with, they tell us that almost inevitably within the first 60 days is when all the systems have the opportunity to fail in the home, because it's been used
They're being
to
stressed.
1 or 2 people, and now there's maybe 4 or 5 people.
And even if there's only 1 or 2 people, we all use our homes differently.
Yep.
There are those of us who work from home and we're there 24/7 basically. And there are others of us that go into the office to work or to school to work or wherever. And so, yeah, they're inanimate objects, but those systems get used to being used in a certain way.
Well, and it's in a lot of different ways, right? So water intake, water outgo. power consumption.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, with all of the technology that we have, if you go from a couple who don't even use a computer or have one to a family of 3 kids and they've each got a phone and an iPad and a computer, as do mom and dad, that's overloading and taxing the electrical system. So it may not seem like it's a big deal, but it's going to be a big deal at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got to watch out for that. And don't even get me started on those things called flushable wipes.
Okay, we're not.
There's no such thing
there's
as
no
a flushable
such
wipe.
thing. Yeah,
okay,
there's
just
no,
to be clear.
no such thing.
Yeah. So
as
please,
flushable
whatever you do,
wipe.
do not
No.
ever flush a
Because-
flushable wipe.
In sewer or especially in septic.
Oh, yeah.
Not in sewer, but especially not in septic.
Yeah. And if you are a person who uses any type of syringe to inject medication, please do not flush those down your toilet.
Or your septic.
Especially if you have a septic system. We went into a home inspection, they did a septic inspection, and there had to be 1,000 hypodermic needles sitting on top of what they call the crust
Oh, it was disturbing.
in the tank. Really weird. Yeah, so
It was
please,
really
I know they're
disturbing.
small, but use a Sharps box. Don't flush them down your toilet. That's just wrong. Anyways, so anything else from you, my dear?
No. Lean on your agent, trust them, read your contracts. As much as you trust your agent, it is your responsibility to make sure you understand what is in the contract. So if you have any questions, please make sure you ask. If your agent offers you a home warranty, take them up on it. It's important to Whitaker Home Team that we help protect you even beyond the purchase of your home. So we have a number of tools to do that. Home inspection being, or a home warranty being one of those. And Murphy's Law is alive and well. So it may be working perfectly, your home, all the systems, the day you walk in, but like Brad was talking about, within 60 days, you may have some issues that you need to have addressed. And if you spent most of your money on getting into the house and don't have much in savings at that point, it can be an issue.
Certainly can. Okay. Well, thanks very much, everybody, for sitting here and enjoying some time with us.
Good to be with you.
It is good to be with you. And so we'll see you again pretty soon.